If it's a hint you seek, go to the movie where generations meet. And if in fact you do, you just might find two. There's your hint for the day. Just decided to do it in a DJ way. Man, look at all the rhyming. All right, let's get back to the video. To the video, the video. Rev's gotta start his real video. Boo!
Fancy intro music, yeah! Woo!
Welcome back to the channel, everybody. If you enjoy the goofiness and the fun, or even if you don't, I encourage you to join the Discord, because that is where we put a lot of our hints after they've aired on live streams and everything. And if you're part of our captain's quarters, which are those who support the channel financially and everything, we have all those listed. This is the first time that the hint I just gave, I'm pretty sure it's been given by any content creator. So it's a fresh hint. It's a new hint, and it's one that nobody's uttered before. Today, we're going to talk about an officer that I don't really think anybody's talked in depth about. So we're going to explain how he works, why he works, and how he's actually pretty good for you, especially as a free-to-play player, to reach places you've never gone before. Wait, missed opportunity to do the whole boldly go thing. Well, rip-a-doodle to that. So let's open up our syndicate menu. Now, I've made it to level 8 through various things like alliance leaderboards, your events, and then, of course, the almighty dollar. But all that aside, a lot of players are getting closer and closer or have already reached the level where they fully unlock Grush, which is right here at level 7. Now, just taking a look at it as a whole, Syndicate is a great system. I love that Grush can be obtained free to play pretty relatively easily. And then as you work on upgrading him, which I haven't even gotten to tier 2, you'll see when I get to tier 10, I'll have 25 more Grush shards. And then I can collect a Grush shard every day if I'm doing this button, which I want to say real quick to the overlords. This is probably not the most efficient place to put this. I feel like too many people forget about it. I know I have. And can we move this to like where the daily chest is? Like, please put the syndicate chest somewhere else. I've asked them this directly, but now I'm saying it in a video. And if you agree, comment section down below. Your voice matters. Don't know what that was. Anyway, yeah, we're here. So we're going to talk about the captain's ability and the officer ability. And to start with, we're going to start with a Centurion. And I've loaded that Centurion out with TOS Scotty, TOS, wrong way. Here we go. TOS Scotty, TOS Chekhov, and Cadet Scotty to talk about warp range. Because the secondary ability of Grush is a warp range ability. Now to go ahead and show that on the screen before we get too deep, here is the officer that we're going over. As you can see, what's mine is mine. The captain's ability is an OPC ability, so increasing your protected cargo limits, helping prevent you from going OPC. And then the fight or flight right here, which at tier 1 is a 6% bonus, and then at tier 5 is 15%. And the big question for a lot of players was, how does this work? Now, just through basic testing of having him, and then also other players unlocking him, we now know the answer, and we'll go over that here in just a second. But here is the generalized everything about Grush. And you can find this on STFC.space. Shout out to Ripper for putting this resource together. It's great to have that, and I find it as a very handy tool. So let's move this off the screen with the power of the internet. Bam! Look at that. I love being able to just control and manipulate everything. And if you do too, manipulate this video by smashing the like button. So I have got the warp range of a Centurion maxed out at warp 72. And the reason I wanted to show this is, one, not a lot of people have this officer. Get out of the way, arm. Getting the TOS officers have been difficult. Now that they're in the, packs and everything, in terms of not the buy packs, but the ultras, and that's been a great addition, so more and more people can get this. But what you will find is that Grush, at the very beginning, is already that good, depending on the ship, or better, especially for a level 30 or 40s player. And as he levels up, he's way better for warp range. Now, there's already a natural ability for explorers in the game to go further because of this officer. This officer only works on explorers, which it kind of makes sense. It's lore friendly. Explorers should be able to go farther, see more, explore more. It's in the name, explorer. So we have no problem with that. But this gives me a 72 warp range, which for you to know, just keep in the back of your head, that is enough for you to get into the beginnings of deep space. Keep in mind, you have to get level 38 to unlock the mission to go to deep space. But if you are curious as to the warp range, to say to get to Zozum, that's going to be warp 64. So yes, you can make it there with something like a Centurion with the right crew. Now let's take a look at this again. So if we were going to take these officers off and I wanted to just remove the TOS crew, well, we would get no captain right there. You see, this comes down to a 65 warp range right there at that, like, we can barely get there. But if I wanted to take, say, Grush and assign him as captain, so we knew we were at before, and now you're going to see our warp range is at 69. Now, if we want to combine them and go, hey, I want the TOS crew and I want to have Grush, well, I should have just knocked them all off. I don't know why I did that, but we sort by group. We'll go back to our TOS and we'll get TOS there, and then we'll just sort by group to make it easier. And then TOS Scotty, flip it up. And now when we combine all of them together, we get warp 73, higher than we had before. Now, why is all that important? Because this is giving an example of how Grush works in terms of pure numbers. The simpleness of it is his ability works after you've added up everything else. So what I mean by that is if you were to take the math, and this is going to be very important for other ships. I'm just using Centurion as a low example. We'll look at other examples here in a second. If you take this and just go, hey, TOS Scotty is +5, Cadet Scotty is +5, TOS Scotty is +4. Well, that's +9 to my warp range. And then after we've calculated that, so you take any type of research you have, you take any officer bonuses, gives you your new warp range. Then Grush works on top of that after the fact to give you your new warp range. And rounding up will really, really help. So here's how we can also look at this. Let's take this down. We're just going to put random officers here so that we can get back to our natural warp range. So that's warp 60. So let's switch it over to, say, the Franklin A, which you get at level 35, starting off at warp range 85. Now, for those who have gotten into deep space, you know there's a couple of barriers that you run into warp range wise. And one of those barriers is warp 100. And getting into those further bracket levels of deep space can be difficult because you'll have these here, this bracket hub right here at warp 75, as you can see right here. Then you go like, well, I want to go to the next hub. I got to get all the way out here and have warp 120. And there's also places that, hey, I can't get to without warp 110 or warp 100. And deeper into the space you go, the requirements get higher. And that is the case for all the hubs. Like, Talvath over here is a 75, but if you want to get out here, you got to go warp 120. So 75 is a big jump, then 100 is a jump, then 120 is a jump. So let's take a look at this ship here with our Franklin. Now I'm going to have to swap it out. You saw it was warp 85, but I've got to swap it out because I don't have enough crew slots. It's easier to use tier 9 ships because of crew slots. So just put the Gladius in real quick. And now we're going to do what we did before. We're going to put Grush here, and we'll get our TOS Scotty out. And now let's swap back to our Franklin A, or as we would call it, our USS Trevor. Shout out to Trevor who purchased this for us when it came out. So here we go, warp 100. We went +15, so +9 and then +6, because how the math ends up working, it rounds it up with your Orion on top of a Franklin A at tier 3. Now I do realize that we're talking about some of these ships that are level locked in terms of the warp range. You've got to get to certain levels to unlock some of the interlocks to get this to where you want to go. But warp 100 on a tier 3 ship is big. I mean, that's more than my ISS Jelly can get. My ISS Jelly natively is at warp 85. You look at like my Augur at warp 70. So having that ability really does help you out. Now, if I was, of course, to swap these out, now my ISS Jelly can get to warp 100. Now, this is also a tier 1 Grush. This is a very beginning Grush. If we were to start increasing that, if we had a max Grush here, you're talking about being able to start reaching pretty close to warp 120 from a lower level perspective. That is a nice boost into the depth of the range you can get. And the reason I think it's important to note this, especially for players who don't have max ships, because shock, not everybody does. So you want to look at, what if you had a tier 3 Enterprise? Well, that's not going to help you. You're going to run a little bit short. But go back to that Centurion we talked about, getting to warp 73. That gets you to the beginning of deep space for basic things like grinding. But more importantly, let's jump up just a couple of ships. Let's assign this. I've got to take my Burrell down real quick. But here is why I think it's important, because if you were to say max out a Burrell, warp 78. Now a Burrell can get you to the first hub system in deep space and allow you to relocate and live there. I think there's value to that as a player. But even if you didn't want to do that, we could still get to warp 74 with a regular one. But that's with TOS Scotty. We would change that out. I'm sorry, TOS Scotty. But with an Explorer, you can now at level 32 have a ship, if you're not maxing out, or you maybe maxed out or working on a D4 and you built a Burrell. Now you can get out there, or using the Franklin A, you can make an easier path to get to where you want to go. And also remember that Grush's ability works on any ship. It's not just Explorer limited. Now, real quick, I want to talk about him as an officer for Overprotected, and I'm just going to go ahead and like brag on my very baby Meridian. Keep in mind as well, I talked about it briefly, but where Grush really can get valuable, especially for you higher level players, is on the USS Discovery. So on my Meridian, when it comes to protected cargo, running Grush, and then both T'Prings, protected cargo of 121,000 on a tier 5 Meridian with maxed out Meridian Fortification Research. So value as a captain, and of course giving me a bonus to warp range at warp 48 at this tier. This is another thing that can push us deeper and deeper. I feel remiss if I don't talk about the Discovery real quick, because I'm going to throw it in there. Mine is obviously underpowered and underleveled. Y'all know that. I can get it to warp, what, 40 something with this. If I throw Cadet Scotty, just add +9. So we'll get to about warp 44. If I do +9 plus what Grush would then give me. So giving you more range there. Once you get all your research done, my research here is only at tier 1 when it comes to warp range for the Discovery. Getting a lot more range out of that boat, very important. So for a higher level player, you're gonna be able to push deeper without needing a high level 5-star ship or something, or help get the Discovery into that 5-star depth that it normally wouldn't be. And for lower level players, able to push into the beginnings of deep space without having to have maxed enterprises or high tier jellyfishes at level 39, which I think has value for everybody. Anyway, that's how the officer works. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, smash the like button. Y'all know what it looks like, but 2 things I'm gonna throw up on the screen before we wrap up. The like button smashing, which you should probably go ahead and do. We appreciate any like button smashing. If you're not sure how to do that, looks like a thumb. Subscribe if you haven't already. Here's the player notes for the officer himself. And if you enjoyed it, hope you come back for more, and hope you enjoyed the hints. Join the Discord if you haven't already. I'm getting out of here because we're running too long. So, bye.
An even better outro than the intro. For the Empire and glory to your house.